या सो इंडियन कॉन्ट्रैक्ट एक्ट में अपन ने क्या देखा था कि जब भी ऑफर या प्रपोजल देते हैं, वो ऑफर और प्रपोजल जब एक्सेप्ट होता है, आफ्टर द एक्सेप्टेंस इट बिकम्स एन अग्रीमेंट. बट अग्रीमेंट इज अ वाइडर टर्म, इट विल ऑल्सो इंक्लूड सोशल अग्रीमेंट्स. सो अग्रीमेंट जिसका लीगल एनफोर्सिबिलिटी होता है, ओनली दैट विल बी कन्वर्टेड इनटू अ कॉन्ट्रैक्ट, अदरवाइज देयर विल बी नो कॉन्ट्रैक्ट. सो सोशल डोमेस्टिक अग्रीमेंट्स विल फॉर्म पार्ट ऑफ द अग्रीमेंट्स बिकॉज दे डोंट हैव लीगल एनफोर्सिबिलिटी. Offer and proposal जब भी करते हैं, there are certain rules and regulations that you have to follow in order to make it a valid offer or proposal. Same for acceptance. So agreement is a wider term as compared to a contract. Contract जो होता है वो थोड़ा narrower term है, and it will, all contracts are agreements, but all agreements are not contracts, is what we studied here. Now, what are the essentials of a valid contract? The essentials of a valid contract, I said it comes from section 10, and that is something that we should be remembering. So section 10 mein there are certain things which are given as essentials of a valid contract, but there are certain things which are not given in section 10 and which are also required for a valid contract. So what are the things which are not there under section 10 which are still required for a valid contract? तो first है अपना two parties होना चाहिए. These two parties should have intention to create a legal relationship. If there's no intention to create legal relationship, then it will only be a agreement, like we have our social domestic agreements. Then there are certain legal formalities for certain type of contracts that needs to be fulfilled. Like for insurance contract, it has to be in writing. अपना property का contract होगा, it has to be registered. तो जहाँ पे legal formality specify किया है, those legal formalities have to be fulfilled. Then next is certainty of meaning. कि मीनिंग जो है वो दोनों पार्टीज को समझ में आना चाहिए, डिफाइनाइट होना चाहिए. अपन क्लास में एग्जांपल लेते थे कि इफ आई एम टेलिंग यू आई एम गोइंग टू सेल अ कार, आई हैव 3 cars, आई हैव टू स्पेसिफाई विच कार आई एम गोइंग टू सेल इट टू यू. आई कांट लीव इट टू योर अजम्पशन कि ये वाला कार बेच रही हूँ, करेक्ट? सो सर्टेनिटी ऑफ मीनिंग होना चाहिए एंड पॉसिबिलिटी ऑफ परफॉर्मेंस होना चाहिए. इट मस्ट बी समथिंग जो परफॉर्म करने का पॉसिबल है. So if I tell you that I'll give you something that I've discovered by magic, जो treasure में discover करूँगी, that I'll give you and you'll pay me 50,000, then that is something which is not possible to perform, and hence then there'll be no valid contract. Then coming to things that are given under section 10. सेक्शन 10 फर्स्ट अपने को बोलता है कि अग्रीमेंट होना चाहिए. किसी ने प्रपोजल या ऑफर किया होना चाहिए, सामने वाले ने वो एक्सेप्ट किया होना चाहिए, उसके बाद ही आई कैन हैव अ अग्रीमेंट. तो वो अगर मैंने ऑफर प्रपोजल दिया है, सामने वाले ने एक्सेप्ट नहीं किया है, देन अग्रीमेंट होने का पॉसिबिलिटी जो है वो कम होता. देयर इज नो पॉसिबिलिटी ऑफ एन अग्रीमेंट. देयर हैज टू बी एक्सेप्टेंस ऑफ द प्रपोजल ऑफ ऑफर विद इन अ रीजनेबल पीरियड ऑफ टाइम. Only then we can say that there is a proper agreement that has come into place. Then second अपना है free consent. Free consent में हमारे पास 5 चीजें होती है जो नहीं होनी चाहिए. Coercion, undue influence, fraud, misrepresentation and mistake. If these things are present, then I will say that there is no free consent, and hence there cannot be a valid contract. थर्ड आता है अपना competency of parties. The parties have to be competent to enter into the contract. Again, here 3 things we have to remember: that he should not be a minor, he should not be of an unsound mind, and he should not be someone who has been disqualified by law. अगर वो disqualified by law है, then in that case you cannot have a valid contract. Then coming to lawful consideration. लॉफुल कंसिडरेशन में हमारा जो कंसिडरेशन है, व्हाट वी आर गोइंग, कंसिडरेशन इज व्हाट, फर्स्ट इट्स कॉल्ड क्विड प्रो को, करेक्ट, समथिंग इन रिटर्न. So when I'm entering into a contract, if I'm not giving something in return, like if I'm doing a charity or a gift, then there is no consideration, then there is no contract. So there has to be quid pro quo, and if there is quid pro quo, only then I can have a valid contract. This quid pro quo also has to be something which is lawful. अगर वो unlawful है, something which is being prohibited by law or something which defeats the provision of the law, then in that case I will say that there is no lawful consideration. नेक्स्ट आता है अपना लीगल ऑब्जेक्ट्स. मेरे जो ऑब्जेक्ट्स है, द पर्पस, द रीजन व्हाई आई एम एंटरिंग इनटू द कॉन्ट्रैक्ट, दैट हैज टू बी समथिंग व्हिच इज लीगल. जस्ट so that has to be the object has to be legal. I cannot involve in something which is fraudulent. So when I say that we are taking the example of RNS decides to rob a bank and then they decide to share the proceeds. So this is something जो मेरे objects ही legal नहीं है. The reason why I'm entering into the contract is itself not legal and hence it is said that the contract is not valid. And last is not expressly declared to be void. So there are certain contracts जो act ने बोला है कि these contracts are void contracts. Some of them I have written here. You can see that restraint of trade, restraint of marriage, legal proceedings, wagering agreement, agreements without consideration. तो ये सारे जो contracts है वो expressly declared to be void है and hence these contracts are contracts which are not valid contracts because act ने बोला है कि ये void है. क्यों ये void है? We will discuss as we go to the third chapter. Okay. So now अपना essentials of a valid contract not given under section 10. Two parties, intention to create legal relation, fulfillment of legal formalities, certainty of meaning, possibility of performance. Defined under section 10 में we have agreement, free consent, competency of parties, lawful consideration, legal object, and not expressly declared to be void. Now, we have different types of contracts. What are the different types of contracts that we have? Okay, before we go to the different types of contracts, let's go to the third chapter and see which are the, just a second. Which are the different, about the different things that are required for a valid contract. Yes. So when we talk about capacity to contract, then we say that the person has to be should not be a minor, should not be of unsound mind, and should not be disqualified by law. तो ये तीन चीज होनी चाहिए. So now when we talk about minors, what are the rules pertaining to minor? What are the laws pertaining to minor? तो minor के साथ जो भी contract हम करते हैं is void ab initio. So it is void from the very beginning and you cannot ratify it later. I cannot say अच्छा वो 2 दिन में 18 years होने वाला है तो I want to ratify it. I cannot rectify. I cannot change it later on or I cannot get it approved later on saying that okay ये minor के साथ किया था but now he is a major. We both agree to it and let's change it. No. If you are a minor, contract with minor is void ab initio and void from the very beginning and you cannot ratify it later after attaining majority. Minor can be a beneficiary. He can take benefit out of a contract. तो partnership में minor जो है, he can be a partner. एजेंट बन सकता है तो ही कैन टेक बेनिफिट आउट ऑफ द कॉन्ट्रैक्ट बट उसके ऊपर कभी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी नहीं आएगा व्हाटसोएवर सो हिज लायबिलिटीज will never exceed his assets. So he can never be declared as an insolvent because उसको हमेशा benefit ही मिलेगा. He'll never be liable for anything because it's a minor. So the party who's contracting with the minor is the person who has to take into consideration as to why this is being done. Then next is minor can always plead minority. He can always say that I'm a minor, I don't know anything. And he can also lie and enter into a contract saying I'm a major, but he's still a minor. तो भी उसको protection मिलेगा. He will always get that protection because he can always plead minority. Then important आता है liability for necessities. अगर किसी ने उसको necessity supply किया है, then in that case, that person is entitled to get that money back if he has given necessities, food, clothing, shelter, education, depending on the status of the minor. So he's entitled to get that money back from the minor, and the minor has to pay to him to the extent of his assets. So if his assets are say 2 lakhs and the guardian has spent around 5 lakhs on him, then he has to return only 2 lakhs to the guardian because that is what his assets are. He is not supposed to or liable to pay the another 3 lakhs because उसके ऊपर कभी extra liability आ ही नहीं सकता है. Then contract by guardian valid if for the benefit of the minor. अगर guardian कोई contract करता है for the benefit of the minor, then we can say that that contract is a valid contract that has been entered into by the guardian, but he cannot sell the assets of the minor without the approval of the court. Then coming to no specific performance. So in chapter 5 when we talk about contracts where the court will ask you to do specific performance. So here I think there was one question also in the papers, and I think you had not answered that correctly. If I remember, I don't remember because बहुत सारे लोगों ने लिखा था. But there was one question where it was said that he has paid damages. He can claim damages, but what is the other thing that he can ask from the court? So वहाँ पे you have to tell that he can ask for specific performance, to say that the court will order you to do that particular part of the contract. So sometimes contracts are such where I say that मेरे को सिर्फ damages नहीं चाहिए, but I want that other person to perform that part of the contract, correct? So for example, if I teach you half the portion and then I leave, then you will say I don't want damages, but I want her to finish teaching because I want to give the exam. So that in that case, the court will order for specific performance. And specific performance का opposite अपन ने पढ़ा था is injunction, where the court will tell you that don't do a particular thing. So if Karan Johar tells Shah Rukh Khan that you can't act in movies other than the movies which are made by me, and if they enter into a contract for 2 years, and if Shah Rukh Khan works with someone else, then in that case, what will happen is that Karan Johar will go to the court and say, please pass an order of injunction to tell him not to work with anyone else. So that is injunction. So there's a difference between injunction and specific performance. Then coming to, sorry, cannot be declared insolvent. Insolvent is a person whose liabilities are more than the asset, and a minor cannot be declared as insolvent. Minor cannot bind the parent or the guardian. So if I enter into a contract and if I say that my dad is going to pay this particular amount to you, and if dad refuses to pay the amount, I cannot bind him because a minor can never bind the parent or the guardian. If there's a joint contract by a minor and an adult with some other adult. So if I make a contract with your dad, then you and your dad, so in that case, only your dad will be responsible. If you are a minor, you won't be responsible. So I can recover the money, I can take action only against your dad, not against you because you are a minor. Then coming to liability for tort and civil wrong. So civil wrong and criminal wrong, there are two different kind of things, and liability torts are basically civil wrongs. So civil wrong where there is no guilty mind present is basically a civil wrong, where I do something wrong without having an intention to do that. Then in that case, it's called as a civil wrong. And in case of civil wrong, the minor will be held liable, but he will not be held liable under the Contract Act because Contract Act gives him that protection. He can be admitted to benefits of partnership is what you have discussed. Agent, he can be, again, we'll discuss it in the next chapters. Then unsound mind, any person who is of sound mind always and sometimes of unsound mind. And there are certain people who are always of unsound mind, but in some phases they are of sound mind. So this person who, when they are of sound mind, they can enter into a contract. When they are not in the state of sound mind, when they're of unsound mind, they cannot enter into any contract, and any contract entered into when they are of unsound mind is not going to be a valid contract. Okay. Then coming to people who are disqualified by law. So we have these 5 people: foreign sovereigns and ambassadors, alien enemy, corporations, convicts, and insolvent. So these are the people who have been disqualified by law and are people who are not, if you enter into a contract with them, then it will not be considered to be a valid contract. Okay. Then we discussed about free consent. The second thing was free consent. In free consent, we say that there should not be coercion, undue influence, fraud, misrepresentation, mistake. These 5 things cannot be present. When a question is asked, because in one of the papers we had a question about coercion. So if a question is being asked about coercion, then in that case, just a second. When a question is asked about coercion, you will have to write this down. Committing or threatening to commit any act forbidden by Indian Penal Code, unlawful detaining or threatening to detain any property with an intention to cause any person to enter into an agreement. So you're right, you can write the certain things in your own way. So when I'm talking about when I'm entering, like when I'm having a valid offer, what are the things which are required? So those points, the bullets are something that you will remember. Inside material, you can write it by yourself. Coercion also explaining, you can write it by yourself. But at least the essence of coercion, कि what is coercion, that वर्ड्स जो है दैट यू विल हैव टू राइट इन द एग्जामिनेशन टू स्कोर मोर मार्क्स. अदरवाइज उसका मार्क्स आपका डिडक्ट होगा, बिकॉज दीज आर द की वर्ड्स विच आर essential to have in your paper. So when you're writing about coercion and influence, the keywords are here in the chart also, and basically the definitions that we have written in the book. So please ensure that you write these keywords down when you're answering. So what is coercion? Coercion is basically when I'm threatening someone to do something, or when I'm actually doing something, or when I'm taking someone's property and threatening him to enter into a contract, then that is called as coercion. Coercion need not necessarily be done on me, it can be done on someone else. But if it is being done on someone else and I am being forced to enter into a contract, then in that case, that will be called as coercion. Contracts by coercion, undue influence, fraud, misrepresentation, and mistake are voidable contracts. So it is something that can be enforced at the option of one party, but not at the option of the other party. So if I am the person on whom coercion is done, I have been forced to enter into a contract, I have the option to decide whether I want to treat the contract as void or I want to treat it as valid. Correct? So coercion, it's a voidable contract. And if I decide to treat this contract as void, then in that case, I have to restore all the benefits that I have received. So if I've received any sum, I have to give it back. And the person, if he has taken, say, for example, a car from me, he has to give that car back to me. So that's coercion. Then coming to undue influence. What is undue influence? When the relationship between the parties is such that one party is in a position to dominate the will of the other. So this is the part that should be there in your paper if I ask you on undue influence. One party is in a position to dominate the will of the other, and he uses that position to obtain unfair advantage. He has to use the position to obtain an unfair advantage. If he doesn't use the position, then in that case, he will not be said to have exercised undue influence. Just a second. So he has to use that position to obtain the unfair advantage. And here we have seen that there are different kinds of relationship that exist. One is real or apparent relationship between master, servant, doctor, and patient. Then you have your fiduciary relationship, which is between husband, wife, father, son. You can say solicitor and client, where there's a relationship of trust that is involved. Then you have mental capacity. Sometimes people who are not keeping of sound mind, they may enter into a contract, or they may ask someone to enter into a contract. So in this case, you have to ensure that there's no undue influence used. Unfair bargains, basically we have seen in money lending transaction, there are unfair bargains. So the person is in a position to dominate the will to get more interest on the loan that's being given. So again, that's undue influence. And these contracts, like coercion, are voidable contracts, can be enforced at the option of one party, but not at the option of other. And if I treat the contract as void, then I have to restore any benefit received. Then coming to fraud and misrepresentation. Again, this was one of the questions that has been asked in the papers that we did, right? So we'll discuss about this. In case of fraud, what happens is that there is mens rea, there's a guilty mind present. I am doing something, or I'm stating something which I know is not true, and I'm doing it to enter you, to make you enter into the contract, or to recover any benefit from you, or to recover any performance from you. So it says that an act which is done with an intention to deceive, I want to cheat you, that is the intention, suggesting a fact which is not true. Active concealment of a fact by having knowledge or belief. Active concealment matlab जानबूझ के I am trying to hide it from you. Even when you ask me that, is there a fault in the product? I say that there's no fault in the product. That's called an active concealment. Promise without intention of performing it, an act fitted to deceive, an act or omission that law declares to be fraudulent. There are certain acts which law tells you that these are fraudulent acts, and that are something which I can not perform. So ये जो है ये fraud में आएगा, and if it is under fraud, then it will be considered to be a void contract. Here we have the option, we have the rule of caveat emptor, which says that let the buyer be aware. So Act says that every time if there is a problem in the product, the seller is not bound to tell the buyer, and the buyer is supposed to do his own diligence and discover that why there is a that there is a there is a fault in the product. But if I ask you and still you remain silent, then there is a fraud. So the question was that there was a horse who is of unsound mind, and the seller is not telling the buyer that the horse is of unsound mind. Is it fraud or not? If I'm not telling, then the rule of caveat emptor will apply. The buyer will have to do his own due diligence and figure out that there is a problem. Now, second question said that in the buyer in the second example was his own son. So if I'm selling it to my own son, then in that case, if I hide the unsoundness of the horse, then will it amount to fraud? So in this case, it will amount to fraud because there is a fiduciary relationship. There's a relationship of trust. And the person believes that my father is not going to give me a horse of unsound mind without telling me. So here it will be a case of fraud. So if there is a fiduciary relationship या insurance contract, marriage, ये सारे में exceptions है. So यहाँ पे you have to disclose. यहाँ पे you cannot assume that caveat emptor will apply. So these contracts, they are exception because of that particular reason. And the third question was that the buyer asked the seller whether the horse is of sound mind or no, and the seller said no, he's of unsound mind. Here, when I'm asking you and you remain quiet, then silence will amount to fraud. So, in the first question, first question was basically what do you call? He's not saying anything. So the rule is that mere silence will not amount to fraud. But when I ask you that is he of sound mind and sound mind, and you still remain silent, then the silence will amount to fraud. So dono में different situations, but the logic is different. So I hope you understood the logic. This is something that can be asked in the examination. So be very clear. Also, if you see any of the exceptions to the rule of caveat emptor, then in that case, rule of caveat emptor will not apply. What are the exceptions? You have fiduciary relationship, contracts of insurance. In insurance, you cannot assume the insurance company to know about what issues you have, and you have to disclose everything. That is the rule. Then contracts of marriage, everything that is material for the person to know should be disclosed, and you cannot keep quiet and say let the buyer be aware. Then there is contracts of family settlement. Again, full disclosure has to be made of material information. Then you have share allotment contracts. So we discussed that the companies, when they want to raise money from the public at large, what they'll do is that they will issue a prospectus and then the money will be raised. So that prospectus should give true information about what the company is doing, what the company proposes to do with the money that they're going to raise, and then they cannot go back and do something else that they've not promised. And last is where silence equivalents to fraud. This is the same thing where the buyer is asking the seller, is there a problem with the horse? And still the seller is silent, saying that there's no problem with the horse, then it will amount to fraud. So these are the exceptions to the rule of caveat emptor. Your caveat emptor, please remember, this is again something that has been asked in the paper, that caveat emptor, which is there under the Contract Act, and caveat emptor exceptions, which are there under the Sale of Goods Act, these are both different. In the examination, you have to read the question. The question will always tell you what are the exceptions to the rule of caveat emptor under the Indian Contract Act, what are the exceptions to the rule of caveat emptor under the what do you call, Sale of Goods Act. So in the question paper, when I had asked the question, it said, what are the exceptions to rule of caveat emptor under the Sale of Goods Act? So when I say Sale of Goods Act, you have to answer as per Sale of Good Act, which is sale by sample, description, sample as well as description, those kind of points. And when I talk about Indian Contract Act, you will say fiduciary relationship, insurance, and marriage contract. So these points which we see on the screen are the points that you will refer to. So please read in the examination which caveat emptor they are asking, because caveat emptor is at both places, and then accordingly answer your question. Okay? Then you have misrepresentation. Misrepresentation basically tells you that when I'm saying something which is not true, or which I believe to be true, but is not actually true, and I think that what I'm saying is the right information, but actually it is not the right information, then in that case, it's called as a misrepresentation. So I'm not giving you false information in order to cheat you. My intention is not to deceive you, but I am stating something which I feel is true, but which is actually not true. But you enter into a contract because of that, then it is called as misrepresentation. Between misrepresentation and fraud, the main difference is that misrepresentation is something where there is no intention to deceive, whereas fraud is something where there's an intention to deceive. Now, in the examination, there are certain distinctions which are asked. Say, for example, fraud, misrepresentation. And if you're not able to write it in this tabular form, you can first explain fraud, then explain misrepresentation. It is perfectly okay. Not for all distinctions, we are supposed to write it in this particular form. So if you remember this in this form, it's fine. But if you don't remember it in this form, you can just write what is fraud, and then you can write what is misrepresentation, and that is perfectly okay. Um, yeah, misrepresentation is done. And the last thing that we have is, before I go there, is a mistake. Mistake is different types of mistake: mistake of law and mistake of fact. When I'm talking of mistake of law, it can be mistake of Indian law or mistake of foreign law. If it's Indian law, then every person who's staying in India is supposed to have knowledge. So ignorance of law is not an excuse, and mistake of Indian law is not excused. But mistake of foreign law is something which may be excused, correct? Then you have mistake of fact, which can be unilateral or bilateral. Unilateral, where one person has some issue in understanding what the contract is. In bilateral, both the persons have made an issue in understanding the contract, and hence the contract becomes void. Correct? So, this is about the three parts which we have discussed from the first chapter. Okay, I'll again come back to this consideration legal object later on. So, agreement is something we'll discuss now. Free consent and competency of parties is what we have discussed. Now, what are the different types of contracts that we have? We have valid contracts. All contracts which fulfill the essentials of Section 10 will be called as a valid contract. We have void contracts, contracts which are not enforceable in the court of law, which I cannot take to the court of law, are called my void contracts. Then I have voidable contracts. So voidable contracts are basically contracts which can be enforced at the option of one party, but not at the option of the other party. So these are called as voidable contracts. Just a second, please. Yes. So, voidable contracts are enforceable at the option of one party, but not at the option of other. Contracts where there are no free consent are all going to be voidable contracts. When do we not have free consent? When there is coercion, undue influence, fraud, misrepresentation, mistake. Then we have illegal agreements. Agreements which the law forbids you to make are called as illegal agreements, and something which cannot be enforced in the court of law. And last you have is the unenforceable contracts, which are good in substance, but due to some technical defect, we cannot enter into such contracts. So contracts which are barred by limitation, correct? Limitation Act अपन ने पढ़ा था, where there's a debtor-creditor relationship, then there is you have to sue that person within a period of 3 years. Now, if it is barred by limitation, then it becomes an unenforceable contract. Then on the basis of formation, we have express contracts, contracts which are expressly agreed upon in words or in writing, like the corporate contracts are always expressly agreed upon. You have implied contracts. Implied contracts are basically contracts which are implied by performance. They are not expressly written or agreed upon, but by my action, the person understands that I'm willing to enter into the contract. These are also known as tacit contracts. Your coolie picking up your luggage or drinking coffee at a restaurant is assumed to be a implied contract that you're going to pay the person for this particular service that you're taking. Then we have quasi contract. What are quasi contracts? Quasi contracts are contracts which are contracts, not really contracts, actually a contract that you entered into, but because of some, just a second, yeah. The law is basically imposing a legal obligation on you because of certain reasons, and which is why you will have to enter into the contract. It says that no man must grow rich out of another person's loss. So in the class, we had taken the example that you had to pay me 10,000 rupees, but instead of 10,000 rupees, by mistake, you paid me 1 lakh rupees. So in this case, what happens is that I cannot grow rich because of your mistake and your loss, and hence I have to reimburse that 90,000 to you. Is there a contract between you and me where I have to pay you 90,000 rupees? No, there's no contract, but still I have to pay you. So it is something which is like a contract. All the essentials of a valid contract that we have discussed may not be present there, but still I have to pay that amount to you, and hence it's called as a quasi contract. It is something which is resembling a contract. The law imposes a obligation on me for the purpose of entering into the for the purpose of making the payment. What are the different kinds of quasi contract we have? First, which we studied for minor, claim for necessities. So here, in case of minor or lunatic, we have where the minor has to pay to the guardian any amount that he has spent for his necessities, food, clothing, shelter, education. Then in that case, the minor has to repay that amount back to the guardian to the extent of his assets that are there. There's no uh, contract that has been entered into where it has been said that the minor has to pay, but the law imposes a legal obligation on the minor to pay that amount to the guardian. Then second is payment by interested persons. Again, this was one of the questions that was asked in case study, where a landlord has promised to pay uh, the electricity bill, but he forgets it. And the person comes to cut the electricity meter, and at that point of time, he says that the tenant says that I'll pay this amount to you. So the landlord is supposed to pay 50,000, but the tenant pays 50,000. So is the landlord supposed to pay the tenant? That is the question. Now, most of you have answered it right, also saying that yes, he has to pay. But when I'm answering it right, only answering part is not the thing that is going to fetch you marks. If you don't write that it is a quasi contract and payment by interested person, these are the two things that I wanted to see in the paper. If you have not written that, then in that case you will get marks, but come marks milega because you've not written. So I don't like I want to know that you know from where the answer is right, वो कहाँ से आ रहा है? What is the logic behind writing that the landlord has to pay the tenant? If I'm asking someone else who is not even doing CA, उसको पूछूंगी तो वो भी बोलेगा हाँ हाँ you have to pay. But for us, what is important is to understand the examiner should know that you know from where the answer is coming. So you have to mention quasi contract, you have to mention payment by interested person in order to get good marks for that particular answer. If you don't write that, answer is correct, you will get your marks, but you will not get full marks. full marks मतलब कभी 5 on 5 तो ऐसे भी नहीं मिलेगा, but I will not be able to give you a 4 mark. I'll give you 1.5, 2 marks because okay, you've not understood the logic or you've not written the logic. So I can't give you full marks, correct? So this was one question that we had in the examination. Then we have obligation of person enjoying benefit of a non-gratuitous act. Here we discussed about the pizza wrongly delivered, and so the person who was delivering did not have an intention to deliver it for free. Now you've enjoyed the pizza, then you'll have to pay for it, even though there's no contract between the two of you. Responsibility of finder of lost goods. The responsibility of finder of lost goods is to take proper care of the goods and to give it back only to the owner. No one other than the owner can ask for it. And last is money paid by mistake. So the example where you had to pay me 10,000, but you paid 1 lakh, then there's a legal obligation on me to give that amount back to you. So these are quasi contracts. Again, which are quasi contracts? First is claim for necessity, payment by interested person, enjoying benefit of a non-gratuitous act, then finder of lost goods, and the last is money paid by mistake or under coercion. So these are all called as quasi contracts. Then coming to ecom.com contracts, EDI contracts, cyber contracts, contracts which are entered by electronic means are all called as ecom agreements. Then coming to on the basis of formation, you have executed contracts and executory contracts. Executed contracts, basically you and me both have promised to perform something. We have performed our part of the promises is called as executed contract. Executory contract may be unilateral or bilateral. So where one party has performed, the other is pending to perform. It's called unilateral. Where both the parties are pending to perform, then it will be called as a bilateral contract. Okay, so this is about the different kinds of contract. Now, to get into the agreement part, for agreement, what do we need? Offer and offer ka acceptance will give you the agreement. So, to have a offer, what is the offer? One person signifies to another his willingness to do or abstain from doing something with a view to obtaining assent. Say it again. What is it? One person signifies to another his willingness to do or abstain from doing something is something which is called as a offer. Offer में what are the essentials? There have to be two parties, promisor, promisee, willingness होना चाहिए, can be positive, negative, and with a view to obtaining assent. So basically your essential is nothing but is coming from your definition of the proposal, which will happen most of the time. Same for bailment also, right? What are the different kinds of offer? One is my general offer, which I'm making to the public at large. Then you have the special offer, which is only to specified a certain people. Then I have my counter offer. Counter offer is basically bargaining. Then you have cross offer, when two people exchange identical offers without having knowledge of each other's offer is called as a cross offer. So if I send you a email accepting the offer and you or giving an offer and you send it through WhatsApp and we are unaware of each other's offer, but our offers are identical, then in that case it's called as a cross offer. And then we have the standing offer, which is valid for a certain period of time only. So tenders are basically an example of standing offer. So you have to accept it within that time, otherwise it's not valid. What are the essentials of a valid offer? It should be something which is capable of creating legal relation. It has to be certain and definite. It cannot be vague. It has to be communicated to the offeree. Here we have the case study of Lalman Shukla versus Gauri Dutt, where the servant didn't know about the offer that the master was making, that whoever finds my nephew will get X amount, but he got the nephew. So he didn't get the money because the offer was never communicated to him, correct? So it has to be communicated to the offeree. It should be made with a view to obtaining the assent. So it has to be, it cannot be just a statement. It has to be. So if I just tell you that, I'm planning to sell my car, that's a statement. That's not an offer. But when I say that I'm planning to sell my car, is anyone interested in buying it? Then that's an offer that I'm making to the three of you all, saying that, okay, this is the offer that I'm making, correct? So it has to be made with a view to the obtaining the assent. It may be conditional. It should not contain a term that non-compliance would amount to acceptance. So if I say that if you do not accept my offer, or if you don't communicate to me by today evening 6 o'clock, I will assume that you have accepted the offer. That kind of acceptance I cannot ask for. It may be specific or it may be general. So I may make it to the whole class, or I may make it only to the three, saying that, okay, I'm giving this offer to Mr. A, B, and C, only they can accept it. So that's a special offer. Then offer is different from mere statement or invitation to offer. So if I'm making just a statement, then it is not necessarily something which is an offer. So in Harvey versus Spacey, we had seen that he asked that what is the price. So he said the price of the bumper pen is so and so. He has not quoted the minimum price. He is not saying that I'm going to sell it to you for this particular price. So it is only inviting you to make an offer. Then you make an offer, then I have the option whether to take the offer or reject your offer, correct? So it is only an invitation to offer. So when I make my formula, offer plus acceptance is equal to agreement. Invitation of offer comes before the offer. So invitation to offer, offer, acceptance, agreement, agreement, legal enforceability is a contract, correct? So invitation to offer or a mere statement or mere a price or a Zara saying that, okay, there's a 50% discount on all products. That is all invitation to offer. When you go to the restaurant, you see idli vada is for rupees 30, then that is invitation to offer. He may not necessarily give you that particular thing that you're asking for. It may be expressed or implied, and statement of price is not an offer. Again, something that we discussed. What is acceptance? Person to whom the offer has been made signifies his assent thereto, then it is said that the proposal has been accepted. Only the person to whom the offer has been made can accept it. Otherwise, you cannot accept it unless it's a general offer, correct? General offer can be accepted by anyone, but only the person to whom I'm making the offer has to accept it. Here we have the rule of Sir William Anson. He says that acceptance is to offer what a lighted match is to a train of gunpowder. Very important. What is he saying? That a train of gunpowder by itself is inert. Nothing happens, correct? But when you put a lighted match to it, there is an explosion that happens. Similarly, when there is an offer by itself, no problem. You can revoke the offer anytime you want to. You can remove the train of gunpowder anytime you want to. But once the offer has been accepted, a contract comes into place, and hence I cannot revoke the offer after its acceptance. If I want to revoke, I have to revoke the offer before it is accepted. In the paper, I had asked a question which said that I told you that the car I'm going to sell for rupees 2 lakh. It's not a car, something else I was selling. But I'm, say, for example, telling you that I'm going to sell the car for rupees 2 lakh, and this offer is going to be valid till 31st of December. Now, before 31st of December, you had not accepted it, but I got someone who is ready to pay 2,50,000. So I said, okay, I'll sell it to that person for 2,50,000. Then is the sale valid? Can you claim damages from me? Answer is you cannot claim damages from me because there was never a contract. When will you be able to claim damages? When there's a contract. Here, you have not accepted it. An offer by itself is nothing. It's a train of gunpowder. So offer, I can always revoke it. Correct? Here, I said that I've sold it to someone else. If I told you that I changed my mind, I don't want to sell my car, would you have claimed damages? No. But if I'm selling it to someone else, you are writing that yes, I will claim damages. The answer is you cannot claim damages because the offer is not accepted. Because acceptance is to offer what a lighted matches to a train of gunpowder. This is what I want you to write in the answer, saying that it is something which is just an offer. I can revoke it. I can give it to someone else. I can change my mind before you actually accept it. But say, for example, you had accepted the offer on 25th of December, and then on 27th, I sell it to someone for 2,50,000 rupees. Then you can claim damages from me because now there is a contract that has come into force. And then if I sell it to someone else, it will amount to a breach of contract. So I hope you are understanding. These are very small nitty-gritties that you have to look into. You have to read the question so properly in order to be able to answer the question properly. Don't just see ऊपर से and assume कि हाँ ऐसा होगा. नहीं. Institute will never ask you straightforward questions. They will always and always tweak something in order to ensure कि आंसर जो है वो गलत हो जाए. So properly question read करो, read it thoroughly, and then you write your answer. Don't assume anything while reading the question. Okay. So you can revoke the offer only before its acceptance. Once it's accepted, you cannot revoke it. What are the rules for valid acceptance? Acceptance can be given only by the person to whom the offer is made. Acceptance must be absolute and unqualified. I cannot attach conditions that, okay, I accept it, but along with the car, you also have to give my scooter, your scooter to me, or you have to give me something free along with the car. It can't be with conditions. Acceptance has to be communicated. I have to communicate either by words or by action that I am accepting the contract. Acceptance must be in the prescribed mode. If I've told you that if you want the offer, you have to accept it by way of a written mail, then you have to accept in that prescribed mode. It must be given within a reasonable period of time. Mere silence will not amount to acceptance, and there are certain implied acceptance or acceptance by conduct. So where I don't actually accept. So here we are taking the example. I go to the jewelry shop. I tell him that I want the earrings, but I'll show it to my husband and then I'll give you the money for it. So here, if I go to the wedding in the evening with the earrings on, then it means that I've accepted the offer. So that's called a implied acceptance. Okay. Now coming to the last part of the chapter, communication of offer, communication of acceptance, communication of proposal, whatever you want to call it, the answer will remain the same. It says that if I'm communicating on the phone, then there should not be any network issue. If I'm communicating face to face, no problem. If I'm communicating on WhatsApp, तो acceptance offer everything immediately हो जाता है. But when I'm communicating by post, there's a problem because the time I send the post and the time the person reads the post, there's a time gap between the two, and hence I have to determine when the offer or the proposal is coming into is being communicated. So here it is saying that from the point of view of the proposer. So when I am sending the post, for me, the communication is done when you actually read the letter. When you open the letter and you read it, at that point of time, my communication will come to an end because it comes to your knowledge. So from my point of view, communication has ended when it comes to your knowledge. Before the chitti has reached you, I can always revoke the offer because it has not come to your knowledge. So communication comes to an end for me, the person who's sending it, when it comes to your knowledge. For you, my communication comes to an end when I have put it in the course of transmission. So this will be applicable for offer, acceptance, or performance. All three, the same logic will apply. So if I have to revoke it, I have to revoke it before it comes to your knowledge or before it is put into the course of transmission for you, correct? So that is revocation. What are the different ways in which I can revoke? Notice of revocation. I can give a notice by lapse of time. Non-fulfillment of condition precedent. So conditions I have laid down that if you want to accept this offer, first you will have to, if you want me to teach you an inter, in foundation you have to score 50 plus. Only then I'm going to teach you in inter. So this is my condition precedent. So if you want to accept the offer, you have to fulfill the condition precedent. Death or insanity, counter offer, non-acceptance of offer in the prescribed mode. So if PwC tells me that you have to accept the offer letter in by way of email, but I just WhatsApp them, then in that case, my offer is revoked. Then in that case, I cannot join PwC. And last is subsequent illegality. If after I have sent the offer, there's illegality. So we had discussed about Bitcoin. Due to change in law, there was illegality. Due to change in circumstances, illegality, then in that case, the offer will stand to be revoked. ठीक है? Then coming to the second part about consideration. What is consideration? Consideration means quid pro quo, that is something in return. So when I'm entering into a contract with you, I have to give you something in return. If I don't give you something in return, if it's only a one-sided thing, then it cannot be called as a valid contract because consideration is not present. Now, it is saying that it has to move at the desire of the promisor to promisee or any other person does or abstains from doing something, then such an act or abstinence is called as consideration. Again, this definition I would want you to remember. If consideration is asked, just don't write quid pro quo. Quid pro quo is correct, yes, but you have to write at the desire of the promisor to promisee or any other person doing or abstain from doing, and such act or abstinence is called as consideration. So moving at the desire of promisor, we have discussed this example where I meet with a car accident and I'm with a friend. Now my friend says that she will pay you 50,000 rupees as damages. He is saying it, but actually, who is the party to the contract? Me. So I'm the promiser. I have to pay 50,000. It has to move at my desire. It cannot move at his desire because it is at the desire of the promisor. I am the promiser. I have to promise it. But I can pay to you or to someone else. So you say that the car belongs to my dad, so I will pay the amount to your dad. So that is promisee or any other person. So it has to move on my desire, but I can pay to you or to anyone else. You say you give it to the car mechanic who is repairing, you give it to him directly, then to any other person. That is fine. And do or abstain from doing something. When I'm doing something, I'm paying you that amount for repairs. That is act of doing something. I tell you that I'm paying you 50,000 rupees. Don't sue me in the court of law. Abstain from doing something. That is also called as consideration, correct? So what are the rules regarding consideration? Again, this was asked in the examination. I've told you in class also that this is an important, concept which can be asked as a 7-mark question also. So you have to first remember what is the definition, desire of promiser. So first point is desire of promiser, then promisee or any other person. So that is against, then you have your act of doing something or not doing something. So you can write positive or negative. So these 3 points you're getting it from your rules regarding consideration only. What are the other things? Executed, executory. Also, when this is asked in the examination or any 6-mark, 7-mark questions which are there, or even 5-mark questions, please ensure that you explain each and every point. So these are only the bullets for you to remember कि अच्छा ये सब मुझे लिखना है. अंदर का matter you can write it in your own words, no problem at all. But these are the points that you have to remember and you have to explain them. Just don't write the bullets and come. You will not, even if the answer is right, I can't give you more marks because you've not explained it. So for a 6-7 mark question, I'm expecting you to explain that particular thing. So it has to move at the desire of the promiser, promisee, or any other person. It can be executed or executory consideration. So executed where I've performed the part of contract. Executory means one has performed, other pending, or both are pending to perform. It may be past, present, or future. What is here? What is that we have discussed here? Present. So when I go to a kirana shop, I say, give me 1 kg of sugar. He gives me 1 kg sugar. I give him 40 rupees. Present. We are doing it in the present. Future. I say that I will come to your shop tomorrow to buy 1 kg of sugar. He said, okay, you will have to pay 40 rupees for it. That is future. So I'll do it tomorrow. I'm not doing it in the present. Past consideration. Past consideration is a little important because past consideration there are two things: past voluntary services and past consideration. So here we are taking the example that there was a fire in the godown of my neighbor, and I called him that there's a fire. What should I do? He said, please call the fire brigade and take out all the goods and do whatever you can to protect the goods. Here I'm doing something at the desire of the promiser. He told me to do that, hence I'm doing it, correct? When there was a fire, did I start removing everything? No. I did because he told me to do it. So I called him at the desire of the promiser, call fire brigade and take out the goods, all of that he told me to do, that I've done. So when I've acted in at the desire of the promiser and now he pays me for doing everything that I did, then that will be past consideration. Here we have again below, we'll study about past voluntary services, compensation for past voluntary services. In this example, same example that we do, there was a fire in my neighbor's godown and I went and I started removing everything. I called the fire brigade and I helped him out. He was very happy that my neighbor is such a good neighbor and he paid me 10,000 rupees for that. This is past voluntary services. So here I'm not calling him, I'm not asking him. He is giving it to me at not at his desire. It is my voluntary act for which he's paying me. So this is past voluntary service. But where he tells me to do something, I do that particular thing. When he gives me money for that, then it is called as past consideration. So I am hoping you've understood the difference between the two. So this is past consideration. So past consideration, present consideration, future consideration. It need not be adequate. Please remember, it's a very small point. Time and again, they've asked it in the examination that consideration need not be adequate. If I'm buying a car today for 25 lakh rupees and I'm selling it to you tomorrow for 25 rupees, no one can ask me whether why I have sold it to you for 25 rupees, because it is a contract between two people and I can sell it for 1 rupee also if I want to sell it. So no one can question why you have done that. It is my car. I can do whatever I want to do. Only and only time when you can ask about why it is not adequate is when there is no free consent present. So if there's coercion, undue influence, or fraud, which is why you are asking me to sell the car to you for this particular price, then in that case, the adequacy of the consideration can be challenged, but otherwise the adequacy of consideration can never ever be challenged. So no one can tell me why it is sold at such a cheap price. It is my product. I can sell it to you at whatever price I want, and no one can question me about that. Please remember this point. Again, small point, but case study question chances are very high. Performance of what one is legally bound to perform. If I witnessed a murder and I have to go to the court of law and say that I'm a witness to the murder, I cannot ask for money for the same because that is something I'm legally bound to perform. Must be real and not illusory, must not be unlawful, immoral, or opposed to public policy. Again, something we'll discuss in the third chapter. Okay, so these are the things that are the rules for the consideration, and you are expected to write all of them, explain all of them in the examination. Okay. Then coming to the next part of doctrine of privity of contract. What is a doctrine of privity of contract? That we are the parties to the contract and we can take action against each other. Third party cannot come and take an action against any of the parties. So that is doctrine of privity of contract. There can be a stranger to consideration, but there cannot be a stranger to contract. If that is asked, explain, you have to explain the doctrine of privity of contract. So in consideration, you can have a stranger because you have promisee or any other person. But in a contract, it's only the two of us. So here I told you that my dad had borrowed money from Mr. Sharma. Once I became a lawyer, I said, I'm going to sue Mr. Sharma. I cannot take an action against Mr. Sharma because I'm not a party to the contract. Only the party to the contract can take an action. So when the lawyers are fighting, they're fighting on behalf of the client. They're not fighting as, the party to the contract, correct? So doctrine of privity of contract says that there cannot be a stranger to a contract, but there can be a stranger to consideration. But there are certain exceptions to this rule. What are the exceptions? In case of a trust, where there's a trust. So Guardian is holding some shares on behalf of the minor, then that is for the benefit of the minor. He's holding the shares. So minor can take an action against the company because the beneficiary is the minor. The shares are of the minor. The money that comes is for the minor. So he's the beneficiary. Similarly, in case of family settlement, sometimes only the male members enter into the contract. But if the male members are entering into the contract for the benefit of the female members or the kids, and the female members' kids, even though they are not the party to the contract, they can enter into, they can sue the other party. Then you have marriage contracts. In case of marriage contract, what happens is, we had discussed this example where the father had told the son-in-law that if you hit my daughter, then you will have to pay her 50,000 rupees. Now, daughter is not a part of the contract, but she's the person who's the beneficiary. She's the person who's going to get that 50,000 rupees. So now the husband hits the wife, and the wife demands 50,000 rupees. So here the privity of contract will not be there, and the wife can sue the husband for 50,000 rupees, even though the party to the contract was the wife's father and the husband, correct? Then you have assignment contracts. If I'm assigning my job to someone else, then in that case, assignment of contract, the assignee can claim money. So we have taken the example of Asian Paints in class where the painting job was assigned to Asian Paints. Then if the Asian Paints are not paid, then in that case, Asian Paints can take an action against the party with whom I have contracted. Then acknowledgement or estoppel. Estoppel, acknowledgement, estoppel. What is estoppel? Where one person represents or allows himself to be represented as something that he is actually not, then it is called as estoppel. Then covenant running with the land, again, very important case study type of question that has been asked. It says that if I'm selling a land, say for example, 10 acres of land to you, Mr. A, and I tell you that on 9 acres, you can do whatever you want to do, but on 1 acre, you have to do organic farming. This is a condition that I've attached with the land that I'm selling. Now, Mr. A sells it to Mr. B. In this case, Mr. B also has to comply with this regulation of 9 acres for anything you want to do, but 1 acre organic farming. Now, if Mr. B uses all the 10 acre for industrial purpose, I, not being a party to the contract, because the contract is between A and B, so I, not being a party to the contract, I can still take an action against Mr. B. And last is agent. So in case of agent, the contract is always between the principal and the third party. And the agent is basically only a intermediary, correct? So we'll study about agent in detail when we talk about agents. The last part here is about validity of agreements without your consideration. So here again, very, very important. By itself, it can be asked for 5 marks. Otherwise, they can ask you pointers on individual points. So case study on natural love and affection, we already had it in the paper. Question on charity, again, we had it in the paper. So natural love and affection, we had this question where the father-in-law had gifted a house to the daughter-in-law, and before he could put it in writing, he had put it in writing, but he had not registered it. So before he could register it, he passed away. So whether the daughter can claim that, the house belongs to me. So the answer is that she cannot claim. But while writing the answer, you have to write that in case of natural love and affection, the parties have to stand in near relation with each other. There has to be an agreement which is in writing and which is registered. So we have parties standing in near relation, the agreement is in writing, but the agreement is not registered. And since it is not registered, then the exception of natural love and affection will not come into force and the daughter cannot claim the property. So you will have to explain all of that, correct? Then past voluntary service we have already discussed. Then payment for time barred debt. Again, this is something which I had asked as a case study question. So time barred debt is again a debt which has crossed the limitation period of 3 years. And now you're promising to pay that amount. Once you have promised, you have to pay the amount to me because it comes under the exception. Then agency, the agency doesn't always require consideration. Completed gifts are always without consideration. Bailment again we'll do in detail when we do the 7th unit. So it says delivery of goods from one person to another upon a purpose for a contract, that the goods shall be returned once the purpose has been accomplished. And the last is about charity. Again, here a person, there was a case study on this particular point also, that a person promised that for the treatment he will pay 2 lakh rupees. So the person got the treatment done, paid 1,50,000, and then I didn't pay that 1,50,000 to him, correct? So that was the question. In this case, because it is charity and I've promised him to do that, there is never going to be a consideration, there's never going to be a quid pro quo. But once I've promised, I have to give that amount to him. But again, now if I ask the same charity question from a negotiable point of view, negotiable instrument का, कि क्या अगर वो check bounce होएगा तो will 138 come into force? Then the answer is no. Correct? Because for 138 negotiable instrument, what is required? We need a debt. तो पेमेंट फॉर डेट होगा और चेक बाउंस होगा तो ऑफेंस है, लेकिन पेमेंट फॉर चैरिटी होगा और चेक बाउंस होएगा तो नो ऑफेंस. सो यू हैव टू सी वेदर आई एम टॉकिंग इंडियन कॉन्ट्रैक्ट एक्ट और आई एम टॉकिंग नेगोशिएबल इंस्ट्रूमेंट एक्ट. लॉट ऑफ पीपल इन द क्लास हैड रिटन दैट नेगोशिएबल इंस्ट्रूमेंट में वो चैरिटी नहीं है, बट आई एम नॉट आस्किंग नेगोशिएबल इंस्ट्रूमेंट, आई एम आस्किंग explain under the provisions of Indian Contract Act. So once you read the question, you will know what I'm expecting as an answer, and then accordingly you can answer. So here, if I'm asking about charity under Contract Act, if you give me provisions of negotiable instrument, even though it is right, answer is wrong because I'm asking you under Contract Act. I'm not asking you under Negotiable Instrument Act, correct? So what we'll do is we'll take a 5-minute breather and then we'll come back. So we can again start where we left on essentials of a valid contract. ठीक है? तो 5 मिनट में
Ma'am,
आज
the papers which you have corrected are in class, right?
sorry,
The papers which you have corrected right now,
I've given it
how
to
will
you, ma'am. So you can collect it from there. Actually, I thought
okay,
I'll scan it and I'll send it to you, but वो individually सबके नंबर पे भेजने का थोड़ा difficult था because I wouldn't have सबका नंबर. तो इसके लिए मैंने वो करेक्ट करके क्लास पे सब दिए हैं. So you can take it from there.
okay.
Yeah. Yes. Should we start? So, capacity to contract. Free consent, coercion, undue influence, misrepresentation, all of this we have discussed. This one point which we had not discussed is on the legal effect. So if there's no free consent, you don't have, and there is coercion, undue influence, fraud, misrepresentation, and mistake. So here, if agreement is caused by fraud or misrepresentation, here we are talking only about fraud or misrepresentation under section 19. If the agreement is caused due to fraud or misrepresentation, it is voidable. But if the party had the means of discovering the truth with ordinary due diligence, then you cannot say that it is voidable. So if someone tells me that Mr. X is going to be a director in the company and the share prices are going to go up, I can find it out very easily. And if I can find it out very easily, then in that case, it is something which is not voidable. If fraud or misrepresentation does not cause consent, contract not voidable. If I'm not given acceptance because of the statement that you have made and I've done it independently, then in that case, I cannot say that it is a voidable contract. And if fraud or misrepresentation does not actually mislead the other party, then in that case, I will say that it is something which is not voidable, correct? So this one small part that you'll remember. Yes. Now coming to legality of object and consideration. So before I go there, I'll just show this to you here. Can you see the textbook here, the main textbook that we have?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Legality of object or consideration. The consideration or object agreement is lawful unless I am doing something that has been forbidden by law. If I am doing something which defeats the provision of the law. So I said if I am a CA and I'm making fake bills to create more expenses, then I'm doing something which is defeating the provisions of the income tax law. I'm doing something that is fraudulent, involves injury to person or property, or courts regard it as immoral or opposed to public policy. So if I'm doing any of these, then in that case, my consideration is not lawful. And if the consideration is not lawful, then in that case, my contract is not a valid contract, correct? Similarly, the object for which I'm entering into the contract, the reason, the purpose for which I'm entering into the contract has to be something which is a legal object. So, discussing about robbing the bank or killing someone or kidnapping someone, this is something which is the object itself is not legal. So, if you tell someone that I'll kidnap the other person's kid and you pay me 50,000, you kidnap, but he doesn't pay you 50,000 rupees, then you cannot take him to the court of law. So, object, the reason, purpose for entering into the contract is something which is not legal. Okay. Now, objects are unlawful. Here we have already discussed this. Forbidden by law, defeats the provision, fraudulent, involves injury to person or property, immoral, and opposed to public policy. When I'm talking about opposed to public policy, what are the agreements which are opposed to public policy? It says that trading with enemy. If you enter into a contract with the enemy country, then it is something which is opposed to public policy. The public or the general people at large will not appreciate that fact, correct? So that is opposed to public policy. Then you have stifling prosecution, where you're not allowing the proceedings to run their normal course of business. Then in that case, it is something which is opposed to public policy. Then you have maintenance and champerty. Maintenance means promising to maintain a suit in which you have no interest. So where I'm trying to extend the legal proceedings in which I have absolutely no interest, or assisting other in litigation with a promise to hand over the proceedings. So here I told you that lawyers can, in maintenance, I'd given you the example, real life example, saying that we had filed a case against someone and he will send someone and say that we are not, he's not in town, he's not keeping well, and he'll just maintain the suit in which he has no interest, correct? And in Champerty, we said that a lawyer, when the lawyer is fighting on your behalf, you can only give him a fixed amount of fee, saying that for fighting per hour that you spend, I'll give you 5,000 rupees. So that is how I will give the remuneration to the lawyer. But if I tell him that if I get 4 crore rupees, out of the 4 crore, 2% I'll give it to you, then that is called a Champerty. I can't do that. Lawyers can't accept that fees in that particular manner. Other than lawyers, also, no one can assist you with the court case saying that you will give them a percentage of proceeding, because then there is a conflict of interest, correct? Then traffic relating to public offices, where to get job in a government office, if you're giving money to someone and you're disturbing the normal course of recruitment, then that is amounting to opposed to public policy. When you try to create monopoly so that you can charge a higher rate, then again that will amount to opposed to public policy. Then you have marriage brokerage agreements, where you are getting someone married for a for a brokerage, then in that case it is opposed to public policy. So it normally happens, we have seen this online also, on TV also, that sometimes the girls from Nepal and stuff, you get them here, you tell them that I'll get you married to this girl, and you take brokerage in return. So that's a marriage brokerage agreement, which is different from your shadi.com or whatever the websites are, the marriage bureaus, where they only give you information and the final call is your, whether you want to meet the person, you want to get married to the person, that's your call. So it is different from marriage bureau. Marriage brokerage agreements opposed to public policy, marriage bureau not opposed to public policy. Then interfering with the course of justice is basically where I'm giving any officer any bribe or any money in order to corrupt him and pass the judgment in my favor, then that is something which is opposed to public policy. Then you have interest against obligations. Here we are taken the example of the person who are making roads, correct? So they will pay money saying you give me the lowest tender price that is there. So I'll quote something below that and you give me the contract. So for getting a contract, if you're paying someone money, then that is interest against obligation. Then consideration unlawful in parts. If the consideration is such that part of it is lawful, other part of it is unlawful, then if you can break those two parts, then you will only do the lawful part. You will not do the unlawful part. And if the entire agreement is such that I cannot break it, then the entire agreement is unlawful. So here, say for example, I tell you that you pay me 10,000 rupees and I will teach you law. So that is the lawful part. But I say that this 10,000 rupees, then I will use in order to kidnap someone. That is the unlawful part. So now if I can break it, then I will do the lawful part. I cannot do the unlawful part. But if it is something that I cannot be broken or the entire part is unlawful, RNS decide to rob a bank and share the proceeds. Now this you can't break because the entire thing is unlawful only. So then the entire contract will be rejected. Okay, so these are agreements opposed to public policy: trading with enemies, stifling prosecution, maintenance and champerty, traffic relating to public offices, creating monopoly, marriage bureau agreements, interfering with the course of justice, interest against obligation, and the last is consideration unlawful in parts. Okay, again, very, very important, can be asked as a theory question also. Coming to the last part of this particular chapter on void agreements. Void agreements are agreements which are not enforceable in the court of law. You can't take it to the court of law and say that, this is what has happened. The court will not entertain you. These are void agreements. What some of them we have already done. So made by incompetent parties, minor, unsound mind, disqualified. We know it's void. Bilateral mistake of fact, but both the parties understand something wrong, then in that case the agreement becomes void, not voidable, because you've not understood the terms. There's no consensus ad idem, correct? There's no same consent for the same thing. So here, bilateral mistake of fact. Agreements, consideration or objects which is unlawful. Agreement, consideration or an object which is unlawful in parts, again just discussed. Agreements made without consideration. So if there's no consideration, there cannot be a agreement that you can make except for the exceptions, natural love and affection, bailment, charity, agency, time bar debts, वो सब जो है past voluntary services, that you can have without consideration because that is an exception. But other than that, you cannot have agreements without consideration. Now the other parts which we have not done is, first, the easy one is impossible acts. Impossible acts, we know that is, if you promise to do an impossible act, then it is something that is void. Agreement and restraint of marriage. So if I tell someone that do not marry Mr. A and I will pay you 50,000 rupees. So when I'm stopping someone from getting married by paying that person that money, then in that case it is called as in restraint of marriage and it is something which is void. In restraint of trade, where I'm giving someone money saying don't teach law in anywhere in Andheri and Parla. So if you start, I tell you I'll give you 2 crores, don't teach law. So that is in restraint of trade. I cannot stop someone from doing a trade that he or she wishes to do. 3 exceptions that we had studied here is about, I'm not written it here, is basically about, here, sorry, it's written here, that if I'm telling the outgoing partner that you cannot do the practice the same business in the same area, I'm putting reasonable restrictions, then it is valid. Second, if I'm telling the partner not to carry on similar business while in partnership. So like I told you, that if I am a partner in the partnership firm and I'm working as a partner there, I can also not have my own CA practice where I'm doing the same business, correct? So that is again in restraint of trade. The firm can put a restriction on me and it will be a valid restriction. And third is employee. So where I was working with PwC, PwC tells me you cannot have your own practice and that is in restraint of trade. But again, it's a valid thing because employees are not allowed to practice the same thing. So that restraint of trade again is a valid thing. Then in restraint of legal proceedings. So if I tell someone that this is the contract, if I don't perform my part of the contract, you cannot take a legal action against me. Correct? So if I'm restricting someone from taking legal action is something which I can take on anyone where there's a breach of contract and it is the right given to me by the constitution. So if I take that right from you, then it is in restraint of legal proceedings and that is something which is not valid. Agreement, the meaning of which is uncertain, where we enter into a contract. I tell you I will sell the car, but the meaning is not certain which car I'm going to sell, what I'm going to exactly give it to you for the money that you're paying. Then again, the contract is void. So certainty of meaning we had studied in the essentials of valid contract ki hona chahiye. And then coming to wagering agreements, very, very, very important. Wagering agreements जो होता है is basically paying money or money's worth on an event happening or not happening. One person will win, another person will lose, and the only interest that they have is going to be money or money's worth and no other interest. तो उसको बोलते हैं wagering agreement. Wagering agreements are void. So सुट्टा लगाने का is basically void and सट्टा not सुट्टा is basically void and something which is called as wager because यहाँ पे मेरा interest is only money. So if I tell you कि अगर इंडिया मैच जीतेगा मैं तेरे को 5,000 देगी, if I don't give you, you cannot take me to the court of law because that is something which is called as a wagering agreement. यहाँ पे there are transactions similar to wager. कौन से transactions है? तो lottery transactions. Again, lottery transactions is a game of chance and there is no this thing. What do you call? There's a possibility of event happening, not happening, and my only interest is the money or money is worth. Crossword puzzles and competitions, इसमें अगर less than 1,000 है तो चलेगा, more than 1,000 है तो wagering हो जाएगा. Similarly, horse race में less than 500 है तो चलेगा, more than 500 है तो wagering हो जाएगा. And speculative transactions. So on the stock market, if I'm buying and selling, but without taking delivery of the product. So मैं वो same day पे before I get the shares in my account, I sell it for the price. So price अभी 52 है और 56 हो गया और मैंने बेच दिया. तो this is speculative transaction. I'm just dealing on the change in price without taking the delivery. Then that will be called as wagering transaction and hence these are void. But there are certain transactions which are similar to wagering transaction जहाँ पे happening non-happening होता है. But still these transactions are valid transactions. ये कौन से है? तो एक है चिट फंड, There's a chit fund act जहाँ पे ये recognize होता है. What is chit fund? Chit fund is like equity party. People come together and everyone pays 10,000. फिर वो लोग एक चिट निकालते हैं, जिसको वो पैसा आता है उसको वो पूरा 1 लाख दे देंगे. फिर वापस नेक्स्ट टाइम पैसा होगा एंड हर एक जन को वो 1 लाख एट अ टाइम मिलेगा. एवरी मंथ दे हैव टू पे दैट 10,000 रुपीज. सो दिस हैपनिंग और नॉट हैपनिंग, मेरे को मिल भी सकता है नहीं भी मिल सकता है. तो अगेन इट इज सिमिलर टू वेजर बट नॉट वॉइड. कमर्शियल शेयर मार्केट ट्रांजैक्शन, शेयर मार्केट में अगर आज मैं पैसा डालती हूँ, नॉट नेसेसरी कि मुझे वो पैसा डबल होके मिलने वाला है, मेरा लॉस भी हो सकता है. तो यहाँ पे it is a wagering transaction because may or may not happen, profit may or may not happen. So here, even though it is similar to wager, it is not a void transaction. Then game of skill and athletic competition, prize money less than 1,000. This we have discussed. And the last is the contract of insurance. Again, very, very important. Insurance contracts. If you have taken fire insurance, marine insurance, so यहाँ पे fire लग सकता है, fire नहीं भी लग सकता है. So happening or not happening होता है. But यहाँ पे my interest is not only money or money is worth. My interest is also the property that is on fire, correct? So my interest is not just money or money is worth. When I'm doing wagering transaction, I tell you India match jeetega, so I'll give you 5,000 rupees. Now this is something which is uh, wagering because the amount that I'm coming at is just a random amount that I'm telling you. But in case of insurance, it is not a random amount that they're giving you. They are telling you the premium that you're paying is also calculated based on some logic, and the amount that you get, agar fire actually hota hai, so the amount that you get is also after doing calculation of what exactly has been the loss, what is actually burned, what can be recovered, वो सब करके they will give you the amount. The contract of insurance, they are like wagering, happening, non-happening of an event and all of that. But end of the day, they are not void transactions. They are very much a valid transaction. Okay, so here we have the difference between the two, and you can go through that. So I'm hoping third chapter clear here, no issues anywhere.
Yes, yes.
Now, coming to the fourth part, that is the performance of the contract. So when I'm entering into the agreement or when I'm entering into the contract, सबसे important होता है कि दोनों पार्टी जो है जिन्होंने बोला है जो वो perform करेंगे, right? This is why we studied what is valid offer, acceptance, contract, all of that, so that you can perform what you have promised to perform, and hence performance of contract जो है is very very important. Now performance नेसेसरीली ऐसा नहीं होता है कि अगर मैंने प्रॉमिस किया है तो मुझे ही परफॉर्म करना. डॉक्ट्राइन ऑफ प्रिविटी ऑफ कॉन्ट्रैक्ट है कि पार्टीज होना चाहिए, बट नॉट नेसेसरी दैट आई विल ओनली हैव टू परफॉर्म व्हाट आई हैव प्रॉमिस्ड यू टू परफॉर्म. समवन एल्स कैन आल्सो परफॉर्म ऑन माय बिहाफ, करेक्ट? सो इफ यू आर ऑर्डरिंग गुड्स फ्रॉम Amazon, जेफ बेजोस खुद आके तेरे को घर पे डिलीवरी नहीं देता है. समवन एल्स इज परफॉर्मिंग ऑन हिज बिहाफ एंड दैट इज ओके. So that is permitted. When is that not permitted? अगर मेरा ऐसा परफॉर्मेंस है विच इन्वॉल्व्स यूज ऑफ पर्सनल स्किल और लेबर, तो अगर मैंने तुमको बोला है कि मैं लॉ सिखाऊंगी, देन ओनली आई कैन टीच यू लॉ. एनी ऑफ माय एम्प्लॉयज कमिंग एंड टेलिंग यू ओके वी विल टीच यू लॉ, no matter how good they are, you will not accept it because it is involving personal skill or labor, correct? If Madhuri Dixit tells you that I will dance in film fair, you want to see her only. Anyone replacing her and coming there and dancing is not something that is acceptable. So promiser himself has to perform if it involves use of personal skill or labor. अगर personal skill or labor नहीं है, then in that case it can be performed by anyone else. You can perform it. It can be performed by an agent, it can be performed by the legal representatives, it can be performed by third person, it can be performed by joint promisers. तो अगर joint promiser ने promise किया है कि हम लोग perform करेंगे, तो वो लोग भी perform कर सकते हैं, ऐसा नहीं है. So in this case, where personal skill or labor, promiser himself, no personal skill or labor, agent, third person, legal representative, and joint promiser, any of them can perform, and that performance will be treated as a valid performance. Now performance जो होता है वो दो टाइप का होता है. एक होता है actual performance, other is offer to perform. Actual performance मतलब the parties to the contract are actually performing. what what has been promised to perform, and or the agent, legal representative, anyone actually perform कर दिया तो उसको actual performance बोलते हैं. Offer to perform, I tell you that I will come to the class and I will get the car and I will take the money, give you the car. Correct? So here I am coming there and on the promised day, date, time, place, and you don't come to take the car. You don't come to accept the car. Then in that case, what is happening is that I have offered to perform, but you were not present. If I offer to perform and you are not present to accept the performance, then in that case, I am not responsible. गलती मेरा नहीं है क्योंकि मैंने मेरा ऑफर टू परफॉर्म कर दिया है. So now you cannot take any action against me, but I can take an action against you because मैंने offer to perform किया and you were not present at that point of time, correct? So actual performance, offer to perform. Now, अगर मैं आती हूँ and if I am unable to give you the car or you don't accept my performance, then in that case I am not responsible anymore. You cannot take action against me, but I can take an action against you. If promise to deliver reasonable opportunity of seeing things मुझे देना है, तो अगर मैं बोलती हूँ कि मैं कार दूंगी, then in that case I have to give a reasonable opportunity to you to inspect the car and then do your part of the performance. So that is my responsibility. अगर मैं परफॉर्म करने आती हूँ, ऑफर टू परफॉर्म करती हूँ एंड मैं कार लेके आती हूँ एट द डेटेड टाइम प्लेस दैट हैज बीन अग्रीड बट यू डोंट कम, इन दैट केस व्हाट हैपेंस इज that I have two options left. One is that I can terminate the contract. I will say that if you don't want the car, I will not give you the car. And second is that I will wait for your performance. So I will say that, okay, no problem. So this I can indicate by words or by conduct. I will say that, okay, I will wait for your performance. We can do it some other day. And I'm showing that thing. So either I can wait or I can terminate the contract. Then we studied about difference between succession and assignment. I said succession is different from assignment. In succession, एक तो पहले लॉ से होता है एंड सक्सेशन में बेनिफिट्स भी पास होता है, रिस्क भी पास होता है, तो जो लायबिलिटी है वो भी पास होता है. सो if I have taken loans, then my legal representatives are responsible to pay the loans. But if I have to take money from someone, my legal representatives can collect that money from someone. तो right भी पास होता है, benefit भी पास होता है, but the risk also passes. But when it comes to assignment, only the risk passes. Again, here Asian Paints अपन ने जो assignment जो second chapter में भी पढ़ा था, in case of assignment, what has happened that I have taken a painting contract and then I don't know to paint the house. So I said I will pass on the contract to Asian Paints. Now Asian Paints has performed their part of the contract. Now, if the third party is not paying me, can I tell Asian Paints that I'm not going to pay you because he has not paid me? No, Asian Paints will want his money. So because I've assigned the contract, here in this case, what will happen is that even if I don't get the money, I will have to pay Asian Paints. So only the benefits pass to them, the risk will not pass to them. That is assignment. So succession में benefit and risk both, यहाँ पे only the benefits will pass. देन आता है अपना जॉइंट प्रोमिसर. अगेन केस स्टडी क्वेश्चंस इस पे पूछ सकते हैं कि जॉइंट प्रोमिसर जो है, when joint promise is made, all the joint promisers together have to make the payment. लेकिन before making the payment अगर कोई मर जाता है, then the legal representative along with the other surviving joint promisers will have to pay. If all the joint promisers die, then in that case all the legal representatives will have to pay the amount. Second, he says that the promisee, the joint promiser, promisee may ask any of the joint promisers saying that Mr. A, you pay me the money on behalf of BCD and then you collect it from them. So in this case, if the one of the joint promiser is compelled to pay that amount, then he has to pay the amount, but he can also recover that amount from the other joint promisers. If someone is unable to pay or becomes insolvent, then in that case, they will have to bear the loss. How much loss you have to bear? In equal proportion. But if I have restricted my loss, saying that I will only pay this much amount, then I am liable to pay only that amount and not more than that, correct? Then if the promisee releases any of the joint promiser, he says that, I hate Mr. B, I don't want to talk to him, so I'm not going to ask any money from him, but the others have to pay. So does it mean that Mr. B's share is something that I don't have to pay? No. In that case, A and C have to pay the entire amount to the joint promisee, Mr. D, but Mr. B is supposed to pay that amount to A and C, whoever has paid that particular sum. So even if he has been discharged by the promisee, he is not discharged to pay the amount. The last part is that it is ulta, where a promisor has to pay more than one promisees, then he has to pay to all of them. If they die, then to the survivors. Okay, so joint promise, very, very important. Time, place of performance, basically whatever time or place has been agreed upon, at that time or place, you will have to perform your part of the contract. But if no time or place has been agreed upon, then you have to do it at a reasonable time. If no place is agreed upon, then you have to mutually decide a place where you want to perform, or at the promisees, what do you call, place of business, place of residence, you can perform the promise. Not very important from an exam point of view also, and it's a common sense thing. So even if it's asked, you can answer. Then performance of reciprocal promises. If I have promised you to give, so if we have agreed that I will give you the car and you will pay me 2 lakh rupees. I have told you that you will first pay me 2 lakh rupees, then I'll give you the car. That's a reciprocal promise. So something in return I'm promising you. So if you don't pay me that amount, I'm not supposed to give you the car. So if you have not performed your part of service, I don't have to perform my reciprocal promise that I have promised to do, correct? If there is an order fixed to it. So for example, I tell you, you first pay me 50,000 rupees, then I'll give you the car, then you pay me the balance 1,50,000 rupees. So here in this case, there's an order fixed. And in this order, we have to go by the order only. So once you pay 50,000, I have to give you the car. If I don't give you the car, you cannot ask for 1,50,000 rupees, correct? I cannot, you cannot ask for 1,50,000 rupees. So here the order has been fixed. You have to perform the services as per the order only. If no order has been fixed, then you have to perform it in a reasonable, logical way in which you perform the services. Correct? If you prevent some party in performing the services, then in that case, contract is voidable at the option of that party. So I called Asian Paints. I said, I want to paint my house, and you come tomorrow at 9 o'clock and come and paint the house. Now, when they come to paint the house, I'm not there at home, or I don't open the door. So I'm preventing them to perform from performing their part of the services. So contract is voidable at the option of Asian Paints, not at my option. Now, there are certain contracts where time is essential. So if time is essential, then you have to perform it within that particular time only. So when I'm buying shares, when I'm buying gold, silver, the price fluctuates on every single day. And because the price keeps fluctuating, then in that case, I have to perform it within that time only. Otherwise, it will not be a valid contract. But if the time is not of essence, so in case of car, if today I can't come and I call you tomorrow, the price of the car doesn't change in a day. So here in that case, I can anytime have the contract. But in case where time is essential, I have to do it on that particular day only, or else I can also claim damages. Impossible acts void होता है. Impossible अगर कुछ भी perform करने के लिए बोला है तो that contract is a void contract. यहाँ पे दो टाइप का impossibility होता है. One is initial impossibility, subsequent impossibility. Again, this we have done when we do void contracts, correct? Void ab initio, valid contracts turned void. So you have to see void ab initio is void from the very beginning. That is also your initial impossibility. मतलब मेरा contract जो है वो स्टार्टिंग से इम्पॉसिबल था परफॉर्म करने के लिए, then that is called as initial impossibility. Subsequent impossibility, when we made the contract it was valid, I could have performed, लेकिन subsequently the contract has become void, then that's called as subsequent impossibility. It can be due to change in law or due to change in circumstances, correct? So change in law में अपना बिटकॉइन वाला एग्जाम्पल था. Change in circumstances में माधुरी दीक्षित was supposed to dance and then she didn't come. So change in circumstances because of accident or whatever. So change in circumstances, correct? इलीगल एक्ट्स अगेन सेपरेबल है तो लीगल पार्ट करेंगे, इलीगल पार्ट नहीं करेंगे, सेपरेबल नहीं है तो पूरा कॉन्ट्रैक्ट जो है वो बन जाएगा वॉइड कॉन्ट्रैक्ट. देन कमिंग टू अप्रोप्रिएशन ऑफ पेमेंट्स, अगेन केस स्टडी क्वेश्चन इसमें हो सकता है। तो अगर मेरे पास 5 इनवॉइसेस है एंड वो 5 इनवॉइस के सामने द पर्सन इज पेइंग मी से 20,000 rupees, then if he tells me that this payment of 20,000 is against invoice 1 and invoice 2, then I have to appropriate it against that particular invoice. If he doesn't tell me, then I can at my discretion adjust it against say invoice 2 and invoice 5, जो मुझे करना है मैं मेरे हिसाब से कर सकती हूँ। और अगर उसने मुझे नहीं बोला और मैंने भी मेरे अकाउंट्स में उसको अप्रोप्रिएट नहीं किया है, देन इन दैट केस जो फर्स्ट इनवॉइस होगा उसके वो पहले अप्लाई होगा। तो ऑर्डर ऑफ टाइम के हिसाब से मैं इसको अप्रोप्रिएट करूंगी, ठीक है। सो अगेन दिस कैन बी आस्क्ड एज अ केस स्टडी टाइप ऑफ क्वेश्चन, वेरी मच पॉसिबल। देन coming to contracts which need not be performed without mutual agreement, तो अगर mutual agreement है तो ही ये हो सकते हैं। कौन से है ये? अपने 4 फेवरेट कॉन्ट्रैक्ट्स है, नोवेशन, ऑल्ट्रेशन, रेसिशन, रेमिशन। कौन सा है? नोवेशन, ऑल्ट्रेशन, रेसिशन, रेमिशन। नोवेशन, नोवेशन मतलब क्या? कि मैं नया कॉन्ट्रैक्ट, आई एम गेटिंग एंटरिंग इनटू अ न्यू कॉन्ट्रैक्ट, this new contract can be with same parties or with different parties. So what happens is my old contract becomes, I'm not performing that particular contract, correct? And I'm entering into a new contract in that place. Then it can be between old parties or the new parties. Alteration, alteration means जो मेरा existing contract है, I'm saying ये contract हम नहीं करके we will alter the terms and conditions. We will change the terms and conditions in the contract, and this will be between the same parties only. So between alteration and novation, there's a very thin line of difference, correct? सो योर नोवेशन जो है सेम पार्टीज या डिफरेंट पार्टीज के बीच में न्यू कॉन्ट्रैक्ट आ रहा है। ऑल्ट्रेशन मतलब जो सेम कॉन्ट्रैक्ट है मेरा उसको आई एम गोइंग टू ऑल्टर इट, आई एम गोइंग टू चेंज इट, इट इज ऑलवेज बिटवीन द सेम पार्टी। सो बाय वे ऑफ अडेंडम आई विल चेंज द कॉन्ट्रैक्ट। Then comes to rescission. Rescission is basically that we mutually agree that we will cancel the old contract and we will not perform that particular contract, then that is called as rescission. So यहाँ पे there is no breach of contract anything. Both parties mutually agree that this is not going to be performed. Remission. Remission is where you have to pay me a certain sum of money. Say you have to pay me 4,75,800. I tell you that please pay me 4,60,000, 4,70,000 in full settlement of your dues. So I am mutually agreeing to waive off a particular amount that you are supposed to remit to me, and that is called as remission. यहाँ पे communication जो है necessary है. I have to communicate it to you that this is how it is to be done, and only then you can have remission. So novation, new contract, new parties or same parties. Alteration, change in contract between the same parties. Rescission is basically cancelling the contract altogether, and remission is where I am accepting a particular lump sum instead of the full amount that is payable. Communication is necessary. Very, very important. लास्ट पार्ट इज डिस्चार्ज ऑफ कॉन्ट्रैक्ट। डिस्चार्ज ऑफ कॉन्ट्रैक्ट के ऊपर मैंने थ्योरी क्वेश्चन पूछा था, आई फाउंड वेरी इनोवेटिव आंसर्स ऑफ डिस्चार्ज ऑफ कॉन्ट्रैक्ट। प्लीज रिमेंबर दिस पॉइंट्स. Also, discharge of contract, if it is a 7-mark question that I'm asking you, I'm expecting you to explain each and every point to me. You cannot just give these headings and tell me कि अच्छा ये इतना ही है, नहीं. I am expecting you to explain to me each and every point that is there. So, डिस्चार्ज कैसे होता है कॉन्ट्रैक्ट? डिस्चार्ज मतलब मेरा कॉन्ट्रैक्ट जो है वो खत्म हो गया है। सो यहाँ पे डिस्चार्ज कैसे होता है? फर्स्ट होता है मेरा परफॉर्मेंस से। तो अगर मैंने परफॉर्म कर दिया है या मैंने अटेम्प्ट किया है, ऑफर टू परफॉर्म किया है, तो माई परफॉर्मेंस विल कम टू एन द कॉन्ट्रैक्ट विल कम टू एन एंड बिकॉज वो डिस्चार्ज हो गया है। सेकेंड इज म्यूचुअल अग्रीमेंट। म्यूचुअल अग्रीमेंट हमने ऑलरेडी डिस्कस किया है। नोवेशन, ऑल्ट्रेशन, रेसिशन, रेमिशन, ये 4 म्यूचुअल अग्रीमेंट से मैं कॉन्ट्रैक्ट जो है उसको डिस्चार्ज कर सकती हूँ. देन इम्पॉसिबिलिटी ऑफ परफॉर्मेंस, इफ देयर हैज बीन एनी unforeseen circumstances, change in law, change in the destruction of the subject matter, or war ऐसा situation होता है, या non occurrence of particular state of things. If I'm unable to perform what is there, impossibility of performance अगर होता है, then in that case it will be discharge of contract. Then I and also discharge the contract by lapse of time. तो अगर reasonable time में अगर action नहीं लिया है तो because of lapse of time मैं बोल सकती हूँ कि contract discharge हो गया by operation of law, death or insolvency, by breach of contract, actual और anticipatory breach जो अपन next chapter में अभी देखेंगे. वेव और रेमिट परफॉर्मेंस, अगर मैं रेमिशन करती हूँ, करेक्ट, रेमिशन इज व्हाट, रेमिशन दोनों में आएगा, एक रेमिशन का अलग से पॉइंट है, एक रेमिशन आएगा म्यूचुअल अग्रीमेंट में, सेम है रेमिशन दोनों भी. तो अगर मैं एक लमसम अमाउंट लेती हूँ इन फुल सेटिस्फैक्शन ऑफ द डेट दैट इज ड्यू, देन दैट वेज आई विल डिस्चार्ज द कॉन्ट्रैक्ट. देन निग्लेक्ट ऑफ प्रोमिसी टू ऑफर रीजनेबल फैसिलिटी फॉर परफॉर्मेंस, तो मैंने फैसिलिटी नहीं दी, आई डेंट अलाव यू टू परफॉर्म, एशियन पेंट्स आया, मैंने डोर खोला ही नहीं, आई वेंट आउट ऑफ द हाउस, देन in that case it will be said that the contract has been discharged. And last is merger of rights, again important, merger of inferior rights and superior rights. So जो घर पे मैं रेंट पे रह रही थी, if I buy the same house, renting tenant is a inferior right, buying the house is a superior right. So now because I am the owner myself, then I don't have to pay rent to myself. So the contract of rent is discharged and inferior rights and superior rights have been merged. Okay, are we understanding? So what we'll do is, I know time अपना जो discuss हुआ था वो हो गया है. So we will do breach of contract and the sixth chapter, and the other 3 units of contract act we'll do it tomorrow. Okay, so we'll do these 2 units and then we'll end the lecture. So coming to breach of contract. So when I'm not performing what I have promised you to perform, then I will say that there's a breach of contract, correct? So if a contract has come into existence, offer plus acceptance, contract मेरा बन गया with legal enforceability of course, then contract has been formed. Now if I don't perform, then breach will come. अगर accept नहीं हुआ है तो breach नहीं होता है, breach नहीं होता है तो damages में नहीं claim कर सकती हूँ अगर मैंने offer को accept किया ही नहीं. Correct? So breach of contract and damages will come into place when I accepted the offer, contract has come into place. Two types of breach, actual breach, anticipatory breach. Actual breach, जो दिन पे performance करना था, on that day of performance, I am not there or I am not performing what I've promised, then there is actual breach of contract and you can take remedies, which we discussed then. Anticipatory breach. I am supposed to perform after 3 months, but today I feel that that person is not going to be able to perform or I am not able to perform, then that is called as anticipatory breach. In case of anticipatory breach, the other party has two options. Either he can wait for me to perform on the date of performance or he can terminate the contract. But anticipatory breach always happens before the performance date. Actual performance का breach होता है on the performance date. So that's a difference and the other party can either terminate or wait. What are the remedies available? एक है damages हम claim कर सकते हैं. So अगर जो बोला है अगर वो नहीं promise किया है वो अगर नहीं किया है तो मैं damages claim कर सकती हूँ. I can resign the contract cancel कर सकती हूँ. Specific performance injunction we have already discussed. Specific performance में court बोलेगा कि अच्छा you have to teach law to them. The balance portion जो बचा है that is specific performance. Injunction में court बोलेगा शाहरुख खान को कि करण जौहर के साथ अग्रीमेंट था कि यू विल नॉट एक्ट इन अदर मूवीज सो यू कांट डू दिस पर्टिकुलर थिंग, दैट इज इंजंक्शन. एंड लास्ट इसमें है सूट फॉर क्वांटम मेरिट. क्वांटम मेरिट में वो बोलता है कि whatever the party, as much as the party deserves, he has to get payment for that. So here we have taken the example where Asian Paints had decided, Asian Paints no, but anyone, like I had promised you saying that I will paint 5 rooms, each room I will charge you 10,000 rupees. I paint 3 rooms and then I run away. Here I can claim that 30,000 rupees even though there is a breach of contract because I deserve the amount for the services that I've already provided. So since I've painted the 3 rooms and उसके बाद मैंने breach किया, at least जो काम मैंने किया है उसके लिए तुमको मुझे पैसा देना ही पड़ेगा. So these are the remedies available. Damages में अलग अलग type के damages है. So we'll see what are the different damages that are there. First, we have general ordinary damages. These are damages which are arising in the usual course of business. Again, this ordinary and special, I had asked a case study of this particular thing. Most of you all got it right. So in ordinary damages क्या होता है कि जो यूजुअल कोर्स ऑफ बिजनेस में होता है कि मैंने कॉटन लेना था, आई टोल्ड यू दैट you will give me one bale, 100 bales of cotton, say for 50 rupees, and on the due date you didn't give me that thing, and I had to go out and I had to get the bales of cotton for 54 rupees. So 54 minus 50, 4 rupees that I have been charging for per bale of cotton, utna is my ordinary loss. When in the examination there was some question on 12.5 and 11.25, something like that, 1.75 का कुछ loss आ रहा था. When you're saying that this is the loss, also mention that how you have arrived at the loss. The calculation of the loss you have to show in the examination. Okay, so in the bracket, or you can just write down that this is how this much is the loss. So show that calculation, don't just write the amount. Remote losses. So here I say that you didn't give me cotton, because of which my government contract is delayed, because of which I had to pay 20,000 rupees. So here in this case, there is a remote or indirect loss that is happening, and this remote or indirect loss has to be communicated in order to claim that. So if I tell you that if you don't give me the 100 bales of cotton, then in that case, I will also miss the government contract and I'll have to pay 20,000 rupees there. If I've communicated to you, then I can take 54 minus 50 rupees per bale of cotton. Plus, I can also charge you the 20,000 of remote loss. Remote loss, अगर मैंने नहीं बोला है, then I cannot claim. If it is not communicated, I cannot claim it. Then coming to vindictive or exemplary damages, basically feelings या reputation affect होता है. Then in that case, I can claim vindictive exemplary nominal damages, where I'm not really suffering a loss, but still I go to the court of law that there's been a breach of contract. Then the court will say, okay, I'll give you nominal damages. It can be as low as 10 paisa. Then deterioration caused by delay. So because of delay, if I'm missing out on any opportunity, or if there is perishable goods and there is a deterioration due to delay, then I can claim the loss. But deterioration due to delay does not only involve perishable goods, it also involves loss of opportunity to sell. So basically, if I tell you that I'm going to sell you the car tomorrow for 2 lakh rupees, you agreed upon it. Now, today evening, I get someone's call saying that I'm ready to pay 2,50,000 rupees. I tell him, no, I'm sorry, I can't give you the car for 250 because I've already promised to sell it to someone tomorrow. Now, tomorrow, at the time, place, date, whatever we have decided, you don't turn up. So I lost my 2 lakh, but I also lost my extra 50,000 which I was going to get. So that is called as deterioration due to delay. So I can claim that 50,000 which I lost because you didn't perform your part of the contract. The last is your prefix damages. When I have agreed upon the damages beforehand in my agreement, I've mentioned that if you don't perform, then this is the damages that you will have to pay me. Here, there are two types of damages in the prefix damage. You have penalty and you have liquidated damages. Penalty is basically when you have a ad hoc amount, essay, only to scare the other person to not breach the contract. That is penalty. Liquidated damages is a calculated amount. I've calculated the amount based on certain how much loss I'm going to incur if you don't perform. And based on that, a reasonable estimate of my loss, I am giving you a amount in the contract saying that if you don't perform, this is the amount I will recover from you. In India, there is no difference between penalty and liquidated damages. Outside India, there's a difference between the two. And whatever the difference is, if I have mentioned a amount in my contract, then the court will allow me an amount which is lower or equal to the amount that has been mentioned, but never an amount which is higher than that. Baki sab mein I can claim a higher amount because it's not mentioned in my contract. But in prefix damages, whatever amount is mentioned in the agreement, only that much amount I can recover, or lower than that, but not higher than that. Okay. And coming to the last part for today, and that is about contingent contract. Quasi is something which we've already discussed. So contingent contract, again, asked in the paper, contingent contract is basically a contract to do or not to do something if the event collateral to it happens or does not happen. So here your contract of indemnity, guarantee, insurance contracts, all of these are contingent contract. Insurance, I will have to pay if there is a fire or your ship sinks, correct? So that is insurance. Indemnity, making good the loss. So I had sent you to US for a training. If you don't come back, then you have to pay me indemnity. Otherwise, you don't have to pay me. So it is collateral to some event. There's always a collateral event. Guarantee. I've given guarantee for the loan you are paying. If you don't pay the loan, then I will have to pay that amount. Again, collateral to certain events. So jahan pe there is, so if some event collateral to such contract happens or does not happen, when you are explaining contingent contract, if you don't use the words collateral to such contract, events collateral to such contract, I can't give you as much marks. So you have to write that may not happen. All of that is right, but event collateral hona chahiye. That point is something that you have to put in your contingent contract, correct? So indemnity, guarantee, and insurance contracts are your contingent contract. Essentials में क्या क्या है अपना कि happening or non-happening of events. Event referred is collateral to the contract. Contingent contract, not mere will of the promisor, and event must be uncertain. So this again comes from your definition only. What are the rules pertaining to enforcement of contingent contract? One is event happening. So it is contingent on event happening. So if your ship comes, then I will give you 50,000 rupees. If your ship does not sink, I will give you 50,000 rupees. That is event not happening. So event happening, event not happening. Then you have event happening within fixed time. If your ship returns within 1 year, then I will pay you 50,000 rupees. So it is collateral to event happening within fixed time. Event not happening within fixed time. If your ship does not return within 1 year, I will pay you 15,000 or 50,000 rupees. That is event not happening within fixed time. So event happening, event not happening, event happening within fixed time, not happening within fixed time. Then impossible events, void hai, that we know. And the last is that contract enforceable contingent upon a living person, and that living person does something to make happening of event possible. So अगर मेरा contract है is dependent on someone at the will of someone. Ship आना नहीं आना is also on the circumstances, the weather and all of that, correct? So ship में अगर कुछ issue हो गया, sink हो गया, तो that depends on particular things. But if it is on event happening, based on the will of the living person. So if someone tells you that if she takes revision lectures, I will pay you 50,000 rupees. Here, to take revision lecture is my will. Correct. So I can change that situation. So this is something that is not possible. It is a void contract because it ceases to be enforceable. Okay. So this is your contingent contract. There's a difference between contingent contract, wagering contract, which you can go through. Quasi contracts we've already done. So we can end today here, and tomorrow we can start with the next 3 units upon indemnity guarantee, bailment pledge, insurance, and then we can go to sale of goods act. So that is the part we intend to finish tomorrow. And yeah, I will send this chat book on group so you can start revising from here if you want to. I will also upload this video. So in case you want to again revisit a particular part, then that you can do. And yeah, that's it. We'll end the lecture here. Any questions or anything that you want to ask?
No.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll end the lecture here. Thank you so much. And study well. Use your day. You've woken up early, so make sure you make the best use of today. Okay. Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye, Miss. Thank you.
Bye, Miss. Thank you.